Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction inspired by real-life emotions and situations. Any resemblance to actual persons, events, or experiences is purely coincidental. The story explores sensitive themes such as infidelity and emotional conflict, and it is meant for mature readers. The intention is to highlight human vulnerabilities and the complexities of relationships, not to promote or justify any unethical behavior. Life had become a relentless cycle of exhaustion and disappointment. Every morning, I woke up feeling as if I was already behind, buried under the weight of responsibilities at work and the growing emotional distance at home. My marriage, once full of laughter and connection, now felt like a fragile arrangement held together by habit rather than love. The spark that used to light up our relationship had dimmed, replaced by silence and resentment. For months, I tried to ignore the ache inside me, convincing myself that this phase would pass. But the truth was, I felt more alone than ever, even though I wasn't physically alone. The loneliness was suffocating, gnawing at my confidence and leaving me drained. I found myself yearning for something, anything, that could bring me relief, even if only for a moment. One evening, after a particularly stressful day, I scrolled through my phone and stumbled upon an advertisement for a massage parlor nearby. The promise of relaxation and escape from the daily grind caught my attention. It seemed like a small, harmless step to take, just a chance to breathe again. That night, I lay awake thinking about the massage. Was it foolish? Could something as simple as a session with a stranger ease the turmoil inside me? But I was desperate. The decision was made in a moment of quiet surrender. The following day, I booked an appointment, feeling a strange mix of anticipation and guilt. As the day of the massage approached, I caught myself hoping for more than just physical relief. What I really wanted was to feel cared for, understood, seen as more than the tired, stressed version of myself I had become. Walking into the massage parlor, I was immediately struck by the contrast between this calm space and the chaos of my life. The soft lighting, soothing music, and subtle scents promised a brief sanctuary. As I waited, my mind raced between excitement and doubt. Could this experience really be the escape I craved? When the therapist called me in, I noticed her warm smile and gentle demeanor. She seemed genuinely kind, someone who might help me shed my burdens, even if only for a short while. Little did I know, that massage session would do far more than relax my muscles. It would begin to unravel parts of me I had long kept hidden, and change my life forever. The door to the massage parlor closed softly behind me, sealing off the noise and tension of the outside world. Inside, a quiet calm enveloped me, the gentle hum of ambient music, the faint scent of lavender, and the warm, muted lighting created a soothing cocoon. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt the tight knot in my chest loosen ever so slightly. The receptionist greeted me with a polite smile, confirming my appointment before guiding me toward a waiting area furnished with plush chairs and soft cushions. I sank into one, my body craving the relaxation I'd promised myself. My heart, however, still carried the weight of doubt and guilt. What was I really hoping to find here? Temporary relief or something more? After a few minutes, a woman appeared, the massage therapist. She was in her early 30s, with kind eyes that held a calm assurance. Her presence immediately put me at ease. She introduced herself softly, explaining the process, and asked about any problem areas. The professionalism in her voice reassured me, yet there was something subtle, almost magnetic, about her manner. As I changed into the robe provided and lay face down on the massage table, the world outside the room faded further away. Her hands began their work with steady pressure, easing the tension in my shoulders and back. With every stroke, I could feel the knots unravel, but more than that, a strange warmth began to spread, one that went beyond physical relief. Between the quiet moments of the massage, we exchanged small talk. She asked gently about my life, my job, and how I was feeling lately. I found myself opening up, more than I expected, sharing snippets of my struggles and loneliness. Her responses were empathetic, never intrusive, but deeply understanding. It was as if she sensed the emotional fatigue hidden beneath my tired exterior. The more I spoke, the more I realized how starved I was for this kind of connection. Someone listening without judgment, someone who cared. For a fleeting moment, I felt seen, really seen, and it was both comforting and disarming. Her touch wasn't just on my skin, it was somehow reaching deeper, touching the parts of me I'd shut away. As the session continued, I noticed the subtle changes in the therapist's demeanor as well. There was a softness in her gaze that hinted at more than professional concern. Our conversations grew more personal, tinged with a vulnerability that neither of us seemed willing to fully acknowledge. The room, once just a place of relaxation, now felt charged with an unspoken tension. When the massage ended, I felt lighter physically but also strangely unsettled. I was grateful for the relief but also aware that something unexpected had begun during those quiet hours, a connection that could either heal or complicate the fractures in my life. Leaving the parlor, I caught a glimpse of her smile once more. It lingered in my mind long after I stepped back into the noisy, hectic world outside. That massage session was meant to be just a break, a moment of peace, but it was already turning into something far more complicated. Something that would change everything. As days passed after the massage session, I found myself replaying the experience in my mind, not just the physical sensations of relief, but the connection I felt with the therapist. It was unlike anything I had encountered in months, maybe years. That brief encounter had awakened a longing for understanding and closeness that I hadn't fully admitted even to myself. When I returned from my second session, the atmosphere felt charged with a subtle but undeniable energy. She greeted me warmly, her eyes lighting up in recognition. The air between us was heavier now, not just with the scent of oils or the soft music, but with something unspoken, something fragile and electric. As she began the massage, our usual polite conversation gave way to deeper sharing. I spoke of my marriage, the emotional distance, the loneliness I felt despite being with someone every day. Her responses were compassionate, and I noticed how she listened intently, truly hearing me in a way I hadn't expected. I felt safe confiding in her, more so than I had in a long time. She, too, shared bits about her life, her struggles, her dreams, her own loneliness behind the professional facade. In that dimly lit room, with soft hands easing my tension, a bridge formed between two isolated souls. We were no longer therapist and client, we were simply two human beings reaching out to connect. I found myself craving these moments, not just for the relief of aching muscles, but for the emotional warmth they brought. It was intoxicating, the way someone could look at you and see beyond your surface, without judgment or expectation. It filled a void I hadn't even realized was so deep. The line between professional and personal blurred subtly but unmistakably. I noticed the way she looked at me sometimes, lingering just a little too long, a softness in her voice when she spoke my name. And I caught myself responding in kind, hesitant but curious. Yet, amid this growing closeness, I was painfully aware of the risk. This wasn't just a massage, it was becoming a lifeline, a secret escape from a crumbling reality. Every touch, every shared glance was a step closer to something forbidden, something that promised comfort but threatened to unravel everything I held dear. Despite my better judgment, I felt drawn to her in a way I hadn't expected. It was a magnetic pull, a silent invitation to cross boundaries I knew I should respect but found increasingly difficult to resist. That massage session, meant only to soothe my tired body, was transforming into an emotional awakening, one that could change my life forever. Each session after that first deep connection became harder to resist. The massage room, once a place of mere relaxation, had transformed into a space charged with unspoken desires and electric tension. I noticed every small detail, the way her fingers lingered a moment longer on my skin, the soft brush of her breath when she leaned close to ask if the pressure was right, the way her eyes searched mine with something more than professional concern. Inside me, a storm raged. I was acutely aware of the boundaries I was crossing, yet I found it impossible to pull back. The loneliness I had felt in my marriage seemed to dissolve for those brief moments, replaced by a thrilling warmth that felt dangerously like hope and temptation. I kept reminding myself of the promises I had made to my spouse, the vows that once seemed unbreakable. But now, in the quiet moments between whispered words and gentle touches, those vows felt fragile, distant, like echoes from another life. What was happening here was no longer just about muscle tension or stress relief, it was about craving something I had been missing for so long, genuine connection, intimacy, and understanding. The therapist's presence was intoxicating. She seemed to sense my turmoil, her touches growing more tender, more deliberate. There were moments when her hands would pause just long enough to send a shiver down my spine, and I would catch myself holding my breath, torn between guilt and desire. I struggled with myself. Was this just a harmless distraction? Or was I opening a door I could never close? Each session felt like walking a tightrope between what was right and what I secretly wanted. I feared the consequences, yet the fear was overshadowed by the need to feel alive again. One afternoon, as the massage drew to its close, our eyes met in the mirror across the room. There was a softness in her gaze that held an unspoken question, a silent invitation. My heart pounded. For a split second, everything else fell away, the guilt, the fear, the doubt. I knew that if I let go, there was no turning back. That moment was a turning point. The temptation wasn't just in her touch anymore, it was in the connection we shared, fragile and real. It was in the promise of something beyond loneliness, something forbidden yet desperately desired. The question now wasn't if I would cross the line, but when. That day, the air in the massage room felt thicker, charged with anticipation and silent questions neither of us dared voice. As her hands moved slowly over my back, the usual comforting rhythm faltered, replaced by an electric tension that neither of us could ignore. The space between us felt smaller, the boundary once firmly set now blurred beyond recognition. I was caught in a whirlwind of emotions, guilt, excitement, fear, and a desperate yearning for something I hadn't felt in years. My mind raced with the consequences of what might happen if I let myself go, but my heart was screaming for relief from the loneliness that had become my constant companion. Without consciously deciding, I found my body responding to her touch in ways that startled me. Our eyes met in the dim light, the vulnerability in both our gazes breaking through the professional mask we had worn until now. The silent understanding passed between us like a spark igniting a flame. And then it happened, one moment leading to the next, the physical barrier I had vowed never to cross shattered. Our connection deepened into something raw and undeniable. What started as a massage session turned into a shared secret, an intimate act that both terrified and exhilarated me. In those fleeting minutes, the world outside ceased to exist. The stress, the heartbreak, the fractured marriage, all melted away under the warmth of her touch and the electric charge between us. For a brief moment, I was alive again, seen and desired in a way I hadn't been for years. But as the session ended and reality began to creep back in, the weight of what I had done crashed down. Guilt gnawed at me relentlessly, yet I couldn't deny the relief and connection I had found. I was trapped between two worlds, the life I had built with my spouse and this secret, intoxicating escape. That massage session had changed everything. It opened a door I never expected to walk through, altering the course of my life in ways I was only beginning to understand. The infidelity wasn't just a physical act, it was a symptom of the deeper wounds I had been hiding. I left the massage parlor that day with a heavy heart and a mind swirling with doubt. The path ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear, my life would never be the same again. Walking out of the massage parlor that day, a storm raged inside me. The air felt heavier, every breath weighed down by the secret I now carried. I tried to steady myself, to make sense of what had just happened, but my mind was a chaotic tangle of guilt, relief, fear, and confusion. For years, I had felt invisible, emotionally starved in a relationship that had grown cold and distant. That brief moment of intimacy with the therapist, though born from weakness and temptation, had given me a taste of something I thought was lost forever, connection. But now, the reality of infidelity crashed down hard. What had started as a search for relief had become a betrayal, not just of my spouse but of myself. I struggled to reconcile the feelings inside me. On one hand, there was the excitement and warmth of being seen, touched, and desired. On the other, an overwhelming wave of shame that threatened to engulf me. How could I live with this secret? How could I face the person I loved without the weight of my actions crushing me? The days that followed were a blur of avoidance and inner turmoil. I went through the motions, work, family, conversations, but beneath the surface, I was fractured. Every smile I forced, every lie I told to cover my tracks, felt like a deeper wound opening inside me. I felt like I was living a double life, pretending to be whole while crumbling at the core. I began to question everything. Was my marriage salvageable? Was the emotional distance something that could be healed? Or had I already crossed a line from which there was no return? The more I thought, the more lost I felt. I found myself avoiding my spouse's questions, sidestepping conversations that could lead to the truth. Yet the silence between us grew heavier. It was as if the walls I had built around my pain were now trapping both of us, suffocating the love that once existed. The therapist's face haunted me, the way her eyes held understanding, the softness of her touch, the dangerous comfort she offered. I knew that returning to her was tempting, a siren call pulling me deeper into a world of secrets and lies. But every time I considered it, the guilt surged stronger. I was caught in a vicious cycle, desperate for connection but terrified of the consequences. The infidelity was no longer just a moment, it was a shadow stretching over every aspect of my life. That massage session had changed everything, not just in that room but in the quiet moments afterward when I was left alone with my thoughts. I was forced to confront not just my actions but the emptiness that had driven me to them. The question now was how to move forward. Could I find a way to heal, to rebuild what was broken? Or was this the beginning of the end? The weight of the secret I carried was unbearable. Every day, I felt like I was walking on a thin line, afraid that one misstep would shatter everything. The distance between me and my spouse had grown wider, filled with silence and unspoken questions. I knew I couldn't keep living this way, trapped between guilt and desire, lies and longing. One evening, after another tense dinner where our words barely grazed the surface, I realized I had to face the truth, not just with my spouse, but with myself. Pretending that nothing had changed was no longer an option. The emotional void that had driven me toward infidelity was still there, waiting to be addressed. I began by looking inward, asking myself what I truly wanted. Was I ready to fight for my marriage, to rebuild the trust and connection that had faded? Or was this secret a sign that it was time to let go and find a new path? These questions haunted me, but I knew clarity would only come through honesty. Summoning all the courage I had left, I decided to open up. I arranged a quiet moment to speak with my spouse, my heart pounding with fear and hope. The words spilled out, confession of my mistakes, my loneliness, my deep regret. The tears that followed were both painful and healing. To my surprise, my spouse listened. There was hurt, anger, and disbelief, but also a willingness to understand why I had drifted away. It wasn't an instant fix, there was no quick forgiveness, but it was the first step toward breaking down the walls that had separated us. We agreed to seek help, counseling, honest conversations, time to rebuild. The road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges and moments of doubt. But for the first time in a long time, there was a glimmer of hope. As for the therapist, I knew I had to end that connection. It was a painful but necessary decision, to close the chapter that had begun in vulnerability and temptation, and to focus on healing what truly mattered. Facing the truth wasn't easy. It meant confronting my flaws, my fears, and the consequences of my actions. But it also meant reclaiming my life and my relationships from the shadows of secrecy. That massage session had changed me in ways I never expected. It forced me to look at the emptiness inside and the cracks in my marriage. And in facing those truths, I found a chance, not just to repair what was broken, but to grow stronger and more honest. In the months following that fateful massage session, my life slowly began to shift, not with grand gestures or dramatic changes, but through quiet, honest effort. The path wasn't easy. Healing a fractured relationship demanded patience, understanding, and more courage than I ever thought I possessed. The weight of guilt lingered, but it no longer controlled me. Instead, it became a reminder of my mistakes, yes, but also of the opportunity for growth. I learned to communicate openly with my spouse, sharing fears and hopes that had been buried under years of silence. Together, we navigated the rocky terrain of rebuilding trust, discovering new ways to connect and support one another. Looking back, I realized that the massage session was more than just a moment of weakness or betrayal. It was a wake-up call, a mirror reflecting the loneliness and pain I had ignored for too long. It forced me to confront uncomfortable truths, to question the life I was living, and ultimately, to choose a better way forward. The experience also taught me about the complexity of human emotions, the way loneliness can lead us down unexpected paths, how craving connection can blur the lines between right and wrong. But most importantly, it showed me that healing is possible, even after mistakes that feel irreparable. I ended the contact with the therapist, understanding that what we shared could never replace the commitment I had made. That chapter closed, and with it, the temptation that had threatened to consume me. Instead, I focused on nurturing the real connection I wanted, the one with my spouse. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still challenges, moments of doubt and pain. But there was also hope, forgiveness, and a deeper understanding of myself and my relationship. The scars of that day remained, but they no longer defined me. In the end, the massage session that changed my life forever was not just about infidelity, it was about awakening, reckoning, and ultimately, transformation. It reminded me that even in our darkest moments, there is a chance to find light and rebuild what matters most.